Good afternoon and welcome. You're listening live to Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist. And this is KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio Live. And I'm here along with Dr. Robert Jaffe, who's also a psychotherapist, and we have been doing this program since the very beginning. And I'm delighted, that we're doing this together. And I will invite Dr. Robert Jaffe to further introduce himself and to tell you about our program tonight.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Robert Jaffe. And Dr. Rashidian is correct. We've been doing this since the beginning. I remember when dinosaurs roamed the earth, we were still doing this program, and that was toward the beginning. So we're here today to help you understand yourself. And when I say yourself, the self is really a large concept. There's so many aspects to ourself. Many people have a very narrow view of themselves, but our self is so huge, and we play a lot of roles in life. But what we try to do in our work is to help people connect with and understand their authentic true selves. And the authentic true self, we believe, is what we are born with, intact. And that part of ourself is spontaneous. That part of ourself is enthusiastic. That part of ourself is naturally curious. And that part of ourself is sexual. Those are just a few of the qualities. There are others. And those parts of ourself, if they are nurtured and cared for, just as a plant or a flower is nurtured and cared for and watered and put in the sun and allowed to grow, those parts of ourselves develop and we flourish and we become excited about life. And when they're not nourished, or worse, they are discouraged, we are criticized, we are told what we can't do, and we are discouraged. We don't flourish, and we hide or suppress those parts of ourselves which make us fully who we really are.
Exactly. And this is a wonderful introduction to understanding our true self, which we see the impact of that in relationships, in particular intimate relationships. I mean, ourselves, whatever, how we identify with it, whether we function as our true self or whether we function as our false self, it will show itself in all of our relationships, among our colleagues, among our friends, and the reason I said intimate relationships is because that's what we do every day. And when we face a couple, we know that how much of their true self is playing a role, and how much of life is based on their function as their false self. So why is this so crucial? Because it's our false selfhood or our true selfhood that brings the challenges to our relationships, and how we relate to each other as a couple. It's based on falsehood, or based on the true or true self. Basically makes a big difference in how we maintain our relationship, lovingly, intimate, healthy, and allowing the love chemistry to continue, running across our moments together. And one of the biggest challenges that I face when it comes to understanding, false self or true self, in couples therapy, I do an exercise called identifying, yourself through art therapy, right? So for art therapy, I use a blank mask. It's a foam mask. And usually I ask, my clients to color the front part of the mask as how they want people to see them or how they want their partner to see them. And surprisingly, majority of the time, the front of the mask, it is painted so beautifully, so decorative, so attractive, so colorful, right? And then the message is that this is how I want to be seen by my partner or by my colleagues or by people in my life, right? So there is a other side of the mask, which is the interior part of the mask. Right. And when I ask, a client to say, okay, well, now you did this beautiful piece of yourself as to how you want to be seen by others, by your partner, okay? But how do you see yourself? Let's color that inside. And for example, right now I have a client, and this is the 5th week that we're working on that piece, and she hasn't been able to even put a dot inside the mask. That means to me, and I'm explaining this to her, that how she's totally unable, at least for now, to understand herself or to identify with her true self or to connect with herself or to know, what it's like to be her. Why? Because she, for the most part, she has been operating as her false self, right? The part that she did everything for her to connect without looking at who she is herself, right? And it's very interesting that when we grow up and we are born into this world with all the qualities that you said, but we are given a sense of false identity as how to be, right?
We are told what's okay and what's not okay,
yeah.
And so we conform to what we're told.
Exactly. And then we make a meaning about it, about ourselves, right? And then we operate from that because that becomes our default place as to how we see each other. So with everything that happens into our life, we automatically go to that default place, which is our false self.
Right. Yes.
Excuse me.
Yeah, so the false self then is the self that is required of us when we're young in order to fit in with our family. And if our family is emotionally together, emotionally stable, and wants us to be our authentic true selves, our family is careful about the messages they give us. For example, my daughter, who has two 3-year-old girls, doesn't want to give them too many messages about their physicality, about how beautiful they are. She will say they're beautiful, and she'll say that they look great, but she doesn't. It's not a big part of what she focuses on. What she does focus on is how creative they are, how imaginative they are, how verbal and how they use words, how kind they are when they are kind to each other, how caring they are. Those are the kind of messages that she gives them. And so she emphasizes those aspects of them so that they will begin to recognize that those aspects are who they are and are the most important part of who they are, as opposed to their physicality.
Exactly.
And it's especially true with girls, because in our society, women are often judged a lot by their physicality and how they look. And so girls need to know that they are a lot more than that.
But and then that's part of life as who we are not, because we believe that we learn to believe, like you said, we are what we look like, or we are the color of our eyes, or the size of our waistline, or
the color of our skin,
or the color of our skin, or the way of life. We go through social classes, and so many things that are given to us are given by people who believe or lived by those rules and norms and culture of society. And then we adapt to that. We make that our default place. So that's how we must be or should be in order to fit in with the rest of the society. So what happens here, we sacrifice our self, our true self, the one that we are born with, the excellent part of us, the beautiful part of us, the true being of us, who we are as a person. We learn that it's okay to put that aside and forget about it, and accept that we cannot forget about it, because that true part of us continues to haunt us until someday we recognize that.
Continues to haunt us.
Yes.
You don't mean haunt us. The true self continues to try to get seen and acknowledged.
Yes, well, I call it haunt us because that's one of the phrases that in one of my interviews that one lady used.
What did she say?
She said, that now she's at the time, that she learned that how her true self has been haunting her in order to capture her attention. But she really didn't want to look back and see that part of herself.
I see.
And she believed that how she was supposed to live was her actuality, where in fact she realized, that true self of her was the most beautiful part for her. And it took a lot for her to recognize that. Mm-hmm. She actually had a very, very challenging life. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I can share her story, but briefly, she got married through arranged marriage, and then she ended up having children one after another. She was forced to have sex many times per night, and she felt that she was raped, mm-hmm. every time. And she thought that was her role as a woman, mm-hmm. because this is how she grew up. Mm-hmm. And so miraculously she managed to find a way out, and she started to just think about how she can live on her own, mm-hmm. which of course therapy helped her a lot. She managed to go to school, and then she didn't go to much of a higher education, enough to get her familiar with business. Mm-hmm. And she established a business for herself and started to put her life together. And we just got a notice of commercial break, so perhaps we can, reflect on this experience right after our commercial break.
Absolutely. Yeah, so please stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome back to our commercial break. This is Heart to Heart program at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert here. For those of you who just joining us, welcome. Glad to have you among us. And we're talking about understanding our true self. And we would like to encourage you to please call us and share about your perspective on this. Our phone number live here is 951-922-3532. You can contact us via this number, or if you wish to speak privately with us, you can use the numbers that they are appearing on the screen, or email us. And please introduce this program to those that you believe they can benefit from, and your contribution is highly valued and appreciated, and we're glad that you're spending your hour with us. So, Dr. Jaffe.
Yeah, so you were telling the story.
Yes.
About this woman, and maybe you can continue with the story.
Absolutely, thank you. So, yes, I mean, across my therapy practice, I have met many women of different cultures, cultural background, with such amazing, stories. And I have to say that, first of all, I myself, I have learned from those stories about myself and about life, about how we are shaped, through our cultures, how we can become a product of our environment, and how, based on that, our lives can change, right? And some of us live under, the false perspective of ourselves without even knowing. And there are, group of women that they even never realize that. And they believe that that's life for them, right? And there are some that, for different reasons, they recognize that, what they have been assigned to, or the type of lifestyle that they have, is not really defining them. It's not really who they are, right? And how that happens, I guess, I still ask myself that question, how some of us can recognize that, some of us cannot recognize that. I guess some of it has to do with the environment that we are living, and access to education and access to information is a part of that. Or there is a strong sense of self that, kind of reminds us of, what, I can do more than this, or I can do different than this, or there are so many factors that makes us become aware of what we have is not who we are, but we are complying, and then I guess that's one of the reasons that we look for what's real for us.
Yeah, I heard someone describe our upbringing and the culture that we grow up in as a kind of hypnotic trance.
Right.
That
I like that.
Yeah, that we are put into, and it has to do with the values and the ideas and the beliefs that our culture and our families hold. And this trance is a very powerful thing. Now, with respect to that, we are born with two powerful drives. The first drive, and the most powerful, is that of survival. And the second is our sexual drive. Those two are the most powerful. And with respect to the first, the survival drive, if we are living in a culture and in a family that requires us to think and feel and believe a certain way, or we won't fit in, we risk their displeasure. And to the child who knows that they are totally dependent on the parent, they can't afford to do that. So they are forced to comply. And that part of them that doesn't wish to comply or has different ideas is forced to go underground.
Exactly.
And to live in that trance. And your question is a great question. What allows some people to wake up from the trance and others to remain in the trance? And I don't know that anyone has an answer to that. I think if we had an answer to that, it would be a breakthrough in the field of psychology.
Yeah.
Because then we could help so many more people who are suffering, because we would help them to recognize that they have been entranced by ideas and beliefs that are not really who they really are.
Yes. So that's, and thank you for supporting my question. Um, there is that, and also there is a part that some of us, we know the way we live is not, giving us the fulfillment that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't feel, courageous enough to look at what is not working and do something about it.
Yeah, when you say courageous enough, again, I think it has to do with survival.
Survival,
and
yes.
the belief that
taking a risk, I would say.
Yeah, and the belief that if we don't conform, we will not survive. Now, most people, I don't think, actually, or at least in our society, which is one of the wealthier nations in society, our society doesn't necessarily think that consciously, that if I don't comply, I won't survive. But it's sort of in the back of our minds that we have to do this in order to fit in, which really does involve survival.
Yes. So going back to my story that I was sharing about this woman, for years she stayed in a very unhappy, controlled, abusive relationship with her husband. She did not have any support from her parents. She did not have any support from her siblings or friends, or actually she didn't have that, friends, because she was so controlled by her husband that she wasn't allowed to actually have a contact with friends. And one time, when her husband wasn't home, and she just decided to pack and leave. That's simple. She just grabbed her jewelry, grabbed some of what she could carry in a bag. I mean, that basic. And she took both of her kids, and at that time, she just went to another city. She met with a friend over there, family friend, and told the friend that she was unhappy and she wanted to get out of the country. And it happened.
And she left the country.
It happened. I mean, and once she was out of the country, and of course by then the family, the husband, everybody knew, and the threats and everything, that they're going to do this or they're going to do that, and she needs to come back. But she knew going back was even more hell for her. So she found, her way to LA, and she just started with a very, very basic, what she could manage with respect to how much money she had with herself, right? It was really tough for her. No language, very limited, surviving skills and all of that, but she was determined. She was determined.
Did she know anyone here?
No.
Oh, wow.
She didn't know anybody.
Wow. So and she didn't speak our language.
No, she didn't. But
so that's a lot of determination.
Yes. But she was determined that what she had was not her life. So she had this inner drive that she would take a risk at all cost to make a different life for herself, right? And that's the part we're talking about. That's the true self. That's the self-food that believes, that the life that she had was a imposed life on her. She was told to be that way, but the part of her was telling her, well, that wasn't her.
Wow.
Right. And this woman, when I met her, she was out of college, and she started, a business, which because she was really smart, I would say, she was very talented. She managed to grow her business so quickly, so fast. And she became a very well-known businesswoman, in LA area. I'm not going to mention her business type. And she spent lots of time, getting to know herself in therapy with me. And every time I saw her here, I truly admire her.
Mm.
And I had such a high respect for her. I mean, she sacrificed so many things in order to get to that true self of hers.
Mm.
And for her to do that, for her to overcome all the challenges, it was a matter of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
Now, eventually she got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, she got reconnected to her parents and her siblings. Eventually, they accepted what happened and then why she did that.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, she got a very high respect that she deserved to have from all these people. But the part that was really sad for her was that why did she have to go through all that to gain all that, respect?
Right.
Then again, every time she learned, how she managed to, understand herself and trust herself and respect that, how she was able to make a difference in her life and for her children, for her daughters, So not everybody is like her. I understand.
Well, I would
that.
say very few.
Very few are like her.
Very few are willing to go to that length and to risk so much.
Right.
However, it's definitely a story that is inspiring.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess the core part that I like to bring up here is, that true self part of us is the part that gives us the courage, gives us the trust, self-trust, gives us the self-love that we all need, and gives us many of the basic life tools for us to rely on and for us to move forward, to design what we want, to design our life, to do what we want, to attend to our needs and to complete the part that needs to be completed in order to have a safe and loving life. Right? And when we do that, that means that we know what we want out of life, and therefore we are able to select a partner that has a complete understanding of our needs, and we are able to understand them, and that honestly that sense of selfhood is the essence of how we can connect with each other.
Yeah, I also would add that the need to be with somebody is going to be subservient to the desire to be your authentic true self,
right.
Which means that you're going to bond with somebody out of desire, not out of need. That you want to be with a person rather than you feel like you need to be because you can't be by yourself.
By yourself, exactly.
Which is a big thing for a lot of people.
Right. Yeah, so I would say majority of the couples I have seen in my practice, their relationships, their connections, their marriage, their intimacy and all of that has been based on what you just said. The need to be with somebody so that they can survive versus the desire to be with somebody because they find each other desirable and appreciate their true selfhood as who they are.
Right.
Which you and I, do talk about that a lot. You and I have been talking about that in our, book, Not Tonight, Honey, I Have a Headache. You and I have been talking about that in our other book, which is The Subconscious Runs the Show, right? We are designing ebooks and we are talking about all of that. So in general, our theme of conversation, our theme of our publications, our theme of our programs is all about, our true selfhood and an understanding of that.
Correct.
My entire research since my graduate school have been about that, understanding female, sexual self. Right?
Yeah. And so I want to also say that a lot of what we're talking about, because I mentioned like we're in a hypnotic trance, that we're entranced by the values and beliefs of our culture, and which goes into our family of origin. But also the other piece of that is that in order to overcome that, we have to develop emotional maturity. And emotional maturity means that we have to learn who we are as separate beings from our family of origin. And many people are caught into the compliance rebellion with their family of origin, which they feel that they have to comply with the way that their family sees them and life, or they have to rebel against it. And
so they lose the balance in between.
Well, so I was going to say that complying or rebelling is still dependent on the relationship, rather than discovering who you are as not being dependent on the relationship. So if you're attempting to comply or rebel, you're still complying with the relationship or rebelling against that relationship, rather than just discovering who you are, which may coincidentally be in accordance with them or not in accordance with them.
Exactly. So let's talk more about this after our commercial break. Please
Absolutely.
Join us.
Please stay with us.
Welcome back to our commercial. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert here at Heart to Heart program, KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio live. And we are talking about our true self and how to get to that part. Dr. Jaffe, I see that you brought our copy of Lose Your Ego, Find Yourself.
I did. Because I thought that our discussion about this is definitely connected with who we are as fully human beings, and the way that.
I'm showing you, by the way, on the screen. This is our YouTube account now.
Oh, okay, very cool.
Yes.
Very cool.
Right.
So yeah, so we wrote this this little pamphlet called Lose Your Ego, Find Yourself. And we are saying self with a capital S.
Right.
Right. Rather than the small self, we're talking about the big self.
Right.
And what does that mean? That means that we are all composed of, well, we are human beings. And human is the part of us that is born into a body, connected with our body, uses our body, and also has a mind, uses our mind, and has a very animalistic part that, like all other mammals, does the same thing. It eats, it breathes, it ingests, it eliminates, and it reproduces. So that's the human part of us, and it's also intelligent. So, and the intelligence is part of our ego self. And then we have the being part of the human being. And the being part is what we would call the energetic or the spiritual part of us as human beings. And that part of us doesn't worry about survival, because that part of us is not in a body that needs to survive. And a lot of people have trouble with this concept, and we don't ask that you believe it or not believe it, but we're going to say what we believe, and you're free to examine and see how much or if any of that fits with your belief. And that self part of us, which is the spiritual part, is really only caring about connection with other people, with other beings, love, and to be loved. That's that part of us. That's the being part of us. And so in order to connect with that being part, we have to recognize that we are more than just our ego part or our human part. We are human beings. And so I brought this out because we wrote a number of things about it. And the first thing that we said is questions to ask yourself. And the first question is, judgment is the ego's way of making itself right and the other person wrong. The ego thrives on being right and loves being better than someone else. So some questions you may consider asking yourself are, the first one is the interaction between myself and the other person involving my need to be right or better than the other person? Because if it is, then you're operating from an ego place, which is human, but not necessarily the highest part of us.
Okay, so I guess, it's it may be, important to say if the answer is yes, how ego plays a role in that.
Yes. Yeah. So if the answer is yes, I'm doing this in order so that I can feel better then we're playing the comparison game. And when people compare themselves to other people, if they compare themselves to certain skills, let's say I play chess and you play chess and I keep winning or you keep winning, one of us is a better chess player. And that's a game, right? Same with any game, same with tennis, same with all the things in the Olympics, right? Those are games. So those kind of comparisons are about game playing. But when I say I'm a more important person than you, or I'm a better person than you, then it's no longer a game. Then we're talking about the essence of who you really are and who I really am, and saying that in the world, I am more important than you. And in the universe, I am more important than you.
Yeah. And what you said, it reminded me of couples who come here, and in particular, when male partner tells the female partner or the wife, that there's nothing going on with me, you're here to fix yourself.
Right. And if
you fix yourself, then we don't have a problem.
Well, yeah. And I think it's interesting that you say that, because I have had both parties say that to one another. More so what you're saying about the man saying that to the woman, but I have had that many times with the woman saying that to the man.
Right.
And either way, it's saying that I am more valuable than you in the relationship. And when I say I'm more valuable, how is that going to affect you? And how is that going to affect me? It's going to make me feel better. It's going to make you feel worse. And if I'm better and you're worse, then how are we ever going to connect?
Exactly.
Because I'm at a higher level, you're at a lower level, we won't be connected.
Exactly.
And if we're not connected, then we're going to have resentment. Usually the resentment is on both sides, because the person from the higher level is saying, I wish I had somebody my equal, but you're not. And the person at the lower side is saying, I would like to be considered your equal, but I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's very, very difficult to have a close relationship with somebody when you're at a different level than the other person.
Exactly. And that's the base of comparison, right?
Right.
Without knowing that we are comparing it, ourselves with each other, but that's exactly what we're doing, When I tell the male partner, what makes you believe that you're all okay and your wife needs to change, they say, well, because that's the way it is. There is nothing wrong with me. But there is everything wrong with the wife, and what you said, makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So basically, Another question, so that's the first question, is the interaction between myself and the other person involving my need to be right or better than the other person. So that's your ego, and the ego is not really concerned with connection. It's concerned with survival and power.
Mhm.
And so if I have more power than you do, then I'm safer than you, and you are beholden to me.
Mhm.
And so you sort of have to worship at my feet. Another question that you can ask yourself to see if you are operating from your ego, do you find yourself bragging to others about possessions, money, or trips that you've taken? Because when you're bragging, basically you're telling the other person, look how wonderful I am. And unfortunately, we've sort of got ourselves into a mess today with social media, with people trying to outdo other people and bragging
Oh,
to other
yes,
people.
yes.
And so it makes people want to lie about themselves, not be honest, and not be vulnerable.
Exactly. And then, the number of posts, the number of followers, exaggerated type of posts and comments and connections and blogs and all the messages that goes in there, and the number of apps and of everything on a cell phone is just all, function of ego.
Right, right. So what is the spirit involved? What does the spirit really want? The spirit's only desire really is to be authentic, to be fair, to join with the other person, and to love. That's what the spirit wants. And so when we are operating from ego, we are ignoring that part of ourselves in ourselves and others. And when that part is ignored, that part sort of fights to be seen.
Mhm.
And if the playing ground is our ego, then people get into arguments over who's right and who's wrong about the simplest of things. One of my couples got into an argument because the husband put the trash that should have been in the recycle bin into the other bin, and they got into a big argument about it. Why? Because she had said to him, "I've told you 1,000 times, that's the wrong bin." And he said, "Yeah, I didn't realize that when I was doing it. I'm sorry." And she goes, "But I keep telling you, so you don't really listen to me, and you don't really take what I say seriously."
She probably was right too.
Well, I'm not saying she wasn't right. However, the issue was not necessarily that she was right, but the issue was that she was right all the time, because that became the arguing about
Right.
that one thing,
Right.
because she may have been right about sometimes, but she wasn't necessarily right about everything. But they were arguing as though that incident was a statement about him.
All the time.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yes, which we know that, we all get into that trap, unfortunately, based on overgeneralization of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just doesn't leave a good feeling behind.
Right. So I just mentioned, do you find yourself bragging to others about possessions, money, or trips? So if you want to share something with someone, sharing your experience is different than bragging.
Right.
Right. Sharing your experience is talking about, let's say on a trip, what you did and how much fun you had, and then listening to other people's input and asking them if they've been on any trips,
Mhm.
right? Rather than how wonderful the trip was and how they got everything, that they wanted, because this particular hotel was a 5-star hotel and cost them $1,000 a night, and how wonderful they are that they can afford it, rather than we had a great time and the hotel was wonderful and which is what we did, and what experiences have you had that you can share?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, focusing on the joy, focusing on the experience, focusing on the selfhood,
Right.
as how the selfhood played a big role there,
Mhm.
right? And how the selfhood, was able to give them the joy that they were looking for, the connection between the parties that they were together, between the family or friends or the intimate partners, So it's the selfhood that was there. And yes, okay, so, there may be good facilities versus the, some other ones, but it's the experience that's really the essence of the situation.
Right.
Not, they had lobster and a steak every night, or they had, whatever for breakfast, or what kind of a serving it was. That's a personal choice. Some people want it that way. Some people, want it differently, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that the joy of one with less service or less, luxury is less than the one with higher luxury.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
That's something that again, couples can get caught in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the more we focus on our selfhood, the more we focus on who we are as a person, versus what identify us as a person. It's more truthful we are with each other and with our partners.
Right. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in therapy, and I'd like to continue this discussion next time, because this is a big one, is when we make judgments. Mm-hmm. And a judgment is saying that my view of this is the view, the only correct view. And if you have a different view, then not only are you incorrect, but you are showing how stupid you are, how uninformed you are, how worthless you are. Judgment is that part of us that takes us out of our spirit and puts us into a place where we are trying to make the other person feel less than. And so rather than make judgments, we can say, I have a different opinion, and if you like, I would love to share it with you. And then the person can either acknowledge that you can, and you can have a discussion and you can disagree. But unfortunately, we've gotten so much into judgment in our government, as well as in our country, that people can't have discussions anymore where they can respectfully disagree.
Exactly. And this is a fascinating topic, and I agree with you about next week. So we are running out of time. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to see you next week. And don't forget, all you need is love.
All you need is love. See you next week.
Bye-bye.